Pharma's new rules for customer experience. Today, unfortunately, Aurélie couldn't make it. But in any case, we expect really a very promising panel today. Really pleased to welcome once again Chris Wade, the Associate VP from Itzivo. Hi, Chris. How's it going? Is it raining in London or?
It is. It's actually sunny in London for a change, but it's rather cold.
Okay, yeah, that's expected, I would say. And then we have also our very fellow peer, Patrick from the ICI Sanko. Patrick, same question to you. How's weather in Germany?
Cloudy, raining, but mood is fantastic.
Okay, at least something, right? So expectations are high. As you know, this is the second session of today. So what are actually these new rules of Pharma when we speak about customer experience? Maybe we can start with you, Patrick.
So the new rules of engagement. So I would say it's not a new rule, but a very important rule is remain relevant. I think a lot of other industries have proven that if you are not relevant, you can do whatever you want, which channel, which timing. People will not listen to you. If you would like to buy a blue jeans and people say buy the yellow, chino, that's this thing this summer, you will say, maybe I won't go to the salesperson again. For us, it's the same. Make sure you really understand what, in this case, medical doctors want from you. So this is why I would say focus on this. If you do this good, there are not so many other things you need to focus on.
Thank you, Patrick. Chris?
Yeah, I guess the new rules are the old rules, aren't they? It's all, you said, Patrick, it's all about relevance. But I think, clearly there's a lot of, there's been some very, very big announcements, in the last couple of days that are going to shape what a lot of organizations are going to be thinking about, the next 6-12 months as they sort of set their plans going forward. But when we think particularly about, and I think the previous session was touching on aspects of, what is experience about, and, relevance has to sort of, cut through everything that we do as an organization. And I think it's recognizing that, that requires joining up functions which perhaps previously haven't been that well connected. I think particularly about, our service functions as an industry, what we do through medical affairs and how that can provide perspectives on, what it is that our customers and their patients, are looking for. The challenges they face run very deep. Disease is managing disease is difficult for everybody. But there is, that need to take what, to be able to, do a better job at taking what we know, what we can learn about our customers and where their needs are. How do we drive relevance from a medical perspective? And then how can that actually help us, better shape our commercial approach so that we're not wasting people's time. We're not being driven by vanity metrics and the like, and we're actually really focusing on, what is going to make a difference to, our commercial performance, how our business is delivering, but also being in a good place for, the changes and challenges that are undoubtedly going to come over the next few years.
Exactly. Let's be even more concrete and let's speak why in overall customer experience is not implemented in pharma. And where actually should we start, right? To build up a process around building customer experience across the entire organization. Because what we see nowadays is we are somehow very disconnected, like we previously also mentioned, medical affairs from commercial, from top management, from marketing, etc. So where to start?
Yeah. So if I may, Dario, so for me, there are two main reasons. So the first one is actually lack of focus. So I believe what is really important is that you select one area where you would like to go deep before you go broad. It's a little bit like what Amazon and Apple did. Amazon started to sell books online, and when this worked really well, they moved on to other areas. And for example, we decided that we would like to focus on personalized engagement with medical doctors. Okay, so this is the one thing which we wanted to do. And this also says, where should you start? Be sure what you want to do. It's no process automation. It's no clinical trial improvement, no chatbots or other stuff. Just one topic. The second thing is lack of commitment.
Mm.
I honestly believe you either need to go all in or it will be perceived as another change project. And what I mean with you go all in is, first, what is the purpose and what do you try to achieve? If you ask 5 people in your company, if 3 or 4 say the same, you're already on a good way. But really make sure that you have a shared understanding. For us, like I said, it's everyone will say, or let's say 90%, yeah, not to lie, create bespoke engagement for medical doctors. So it's really within our DNA. It also means you need to think about the people. What are their roles and responsibilities when you say we would like to create bespoke engagement? Are classical marketeers really the ones which you need? Do you recruit new people from FMCG or e-commerce? And if yes, what are their roles? Is it tagging content? Is it helping to develop modular content? You really need to be very clear which people and which skills you need to achieve your purpose. The next thing is processes. If you really say we would like to make a difference, don't just say we move from an annual planning to a quarterly planning, but really work on it. Say, what does it mean, quarterly planning? So do we have an annual brand planning at the beginning of the year and then we have quarterly updates? If yes, what do we talk about in the quarterly update? Who makes the decision, whether we still focus on a strategic imperative or a priority or not? And the last thing, and maybe the most important thing, is when it's lack of commitment, plan for long-term success. So this is nothing you can achieve in 3, 6, or 12 months. So it took us 1.5 or 2 years to get the basics right. So really the blueprint, roles, processes, people, what I said. And we said, let's take 2 years of time to implement it across Europe. So I'm working in the European headquarters and break it down into quarters and months and what it takes to basically execute. And I can tell you this 2-year, let's say, roadmap was a big relief for many people. It took some time to be understood. Until people said, what do you mean we don't need to go live tomorrow? We said, no, there are still some things lacking. So we really need to make sure you have the time to understand, to recruit the new people and to implement. And this is why we have this monthly and quarterly checkups. But be realistic, because otherwise people will be frustrated and you will fail. And this is what I would like to say, lack of focus and lack of commitment. If you want to do it, really go all in, because otherwise, very high chance to fail.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Patrick. Chris, let's hear your point of view from a solution manager.
I mean, obviously, coming from a solution perspective, I will always championing the role that that technology should be playing in enabling change. But culture eats strategy for breakfast, and all of those great sayings. I think to Patrick's point, the challenge that many organizations have faced is that they essentially define their change program on the basis of a technology rollout plan. That they don't think about how am I going to win hearts and minds? How do we get, whether it's from the CEO, level, senior management, that they are fully on board with the difference between a CX mindset and the traditional, engagement model and, and sort of success measures that have gone around that. That can't be understated. Similarly, bringing people with you. The idea that people out in the field in whether it's in sales or medical roles are, merely kind of like reading from the screen, parroting what's the next slide, that's not real. Go out with a rep. They put a huge amount of focus on understanding that customer that they're talking to, looking at using their experience, using their knowledge to try and better shape their approach. And often technology has actually been the problem here. It's restricted that individuality. It's restricted the human touch to say, and it's sort of been reinforced, I think, by some pretty short-sighted compliance processes around the old, you have to start at slide 1, you have to go from slide 1 to slide 2 to slide 3. You can't shape the conversation because the perception of because we track this data and it's not the same as a conversation that, you know, you're potentially putting yourself at risk from an audit perspective around not providing fair balance. You know, it's a fair criticism, but it's, you know, it kind of puts all of the weight on one particular, you know, aspect of the process, which in this case, say slide tracking, as being the only measure of what happened in that sales call. Clearly, there's a conversation that's happening alongside that, but that's lost. So I think you know, there is, you know, it's no one thing, but I think, you know, to me, the fundamental starting point is recognizing that experience is not just the addition, all the channels sort of coming together. It's more than the sum of the parts. It's looking over time what your customers want, what you're able to offer them, and how you can evolve and improve that, you know, through focus, through investment, through improvement. And it's a, you know, it's always going to be a moving target. You know, bearing in mind what it is that these, you know, that their customers are actually doing. You know, they're out there, you know, speaking to patients, making treatment decisions. Every patient is different. Every disease presentation is different. And that's going to be always, you know, that inherently creates big challenges for, you know, how, you know, what you can say, how you can communicate it. But I think, you know, what the heartening thing for me is there are more and more companies, you know, like, you know, Patrick and his colleagues at Daiichi and many others who, you know, are actively, you know, breaking out of that mold that I think we've been set in for far too long, that when we think about CRM, it was purely in terms of, you know, here's the system that the Salesforce use, or here's the system my field uses. It wasn't a system. It wasn't a platform for managing your customers across all of the different parts of the business that they interact with. And if you go into, you know, any other industry sector and have that conversation and said, oh, we've got a great new CRM system, and to your earlier comment, Dario, it's only going to support the guy at the front desk, but it doesn't connect to, you know, any other aspect of that hotel chain's operations, they'd think you were mad. You know, we have to make that change. We have to recognize that, you know, it's not about multi-channel, it's not about omni-channel, it's about how we work as a business and how we can best position ourselves to be there for our customers.
Very interesting points. Before we take over some questions from the audience, I would like to speak about some real examples of customer experience which you implemented in your organization. Maybe we can start with you, Patrick, because I would say you really did a remarkable journey, and do you maybe have already something to share with the audience?
Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 examples. So you just stop me when it gets too long. I try to be quick. 1 minute, 1 example. Okay. So the first thing is we visited yesterday actually some of our smaller countries, and they also started to create personalized content. They did 3 iterations. The first time they produced with a key opinion leader a 30-minute video about 3 topics, which took 6 or 9 weeks to deliver. Yeah? Very cumbersome, fantastic video, but let's be honest, who will watch it? 30 minutes, no one. Yeah? Okay. So second iteration, they briefed the doctor and said, okay, we have some learnings, no slides. Yeah? We will do 3 or 4 videos instead of 1. So 1 short video per topic. Yeah? And it's audio only. Okay. So we really focus on the content. And you could say, do you really believe it's a good idea to make these type of suggestions, you know, to key opinion leaders? But you could really see that the feedback which was provided was great, because the doctor said, you're really right. I also wouldn't watch a 30-minute video. Yeah. But clearly telling me we don't need slides. Let's focus on the content. 1 short topic at a time, bite-sized, makes sense. 1 example. The second example is how you basically make sure you focus on your customers. So if you plan, what is my goal actually when I talk to a key opinion leader? Yeah, participating in events, disseminating data. Yeah, you can name your goals. But is it really customer focused when you say, oh, could you please speak at event XYZ? I don't think so, because this is push. You make suggestions. This is where you can contribute. But what if you would, you know, invite the doctor and say, let's make an annual plan. So we have these congresses, we have these speaker events, we have these publications. Where are your interests? And at the conferences or publications or ad boards would you like to participate? These are the topics. This is where you can select from. Let's make sure this is really fit for purpose from a topic perspective, from your preference perspective. And then we create the plan once. If there are minor changes, fine. But this is true co-creation and putting the customer in the center and not pushing it, but basically pulling. Absolutely.
Chris?
Yeah, lots of small ones. I mean, I think back to I used to work for a company in the UK called Doctors Net UK, ran a physician community, and we did a lot of work for different pharma companies on there in terms of providing brand marketing services to UK doctors, and the main rule was if you couldn't do it in 3 slides, we didn't do it. And we'd sat down with the brand team and they'd sort of say, here's our detail aid, and it'd be 80 pages. And it would be this very sort of painful conversation around, okay, how do what is it that you really need to get across in the space of, whether we want to talk about the kind of 7-second rule or whatever it is that, the importance of being able to just capture attention and do it in a way that actually both is simple to engage with, but also it respects the skills and knowledge of the audience. And I think that's been often one of the disconnects, that brevity gets confused with simplicity. Often we are dealing with, always very highly trained, very skilled, very specialized people. So they have a very high, baseline knowledge, and they expect materials to be geared accordingly. In terms of what I've seen more recently, I think good examples are where companies and Daiichi included are actively really trying to connect their marketing operations, not just from a campaign marketing, but putting marketing at the center of owning the customer experience, being responsible for it, and then working very closely with the I suppose the traditional custodians of relationship in the field, to make sure that it's not just a sort of an assume that what sales thinks is what happens in the rest of the business, and that sort of sense of what's relevant to you is going to be dictated by the channel I'm using, by the setting we're in. Is it an inbound? Is it out? Is something we're trying to communicate? Is it a question we're being asked? So that sort of idea of the persona being a kind of a very fixed entity is rapidly breaking down as we apply marketing theory, marketing experience from other sectors, and recognizing that the setting is very specific. How we respond, how we react is very specific, but we're able to do that now. And I think that's one of the key sort of moves forward from a technology standpoint is that we're no longer looking at trying to bolt together disparate systems that are really only built to do one thing. And then you've either got to sort of suck everything into a data lake or build a lot of heavy integration. The solutions such as Xevos are designed to be natively connected. It's a unified customer solution with all of the different business process tools that different people in the business need, whether it's marketing, whether it's medical, whether it's sales. They all have different roles. They have different requirements. They work in different ways. So the idea of one tool is, that's never going to work. Different people need different tools, but they need to be able to work together.
Very good point, Chris. In the meantime, we received a very interesting question, which I will display here, coming from Lode. In all of these, by Patrick and Chris, it appears that HCP's prescribers is still the customer in an essentially rep-based sales model. Is that understanding correct? If so, what are the new rules? Very interesting question indeed. Who would like to go first? Please.
So thanks, Lode, for the question. So no, for us, the rep is not the center of the action. For us, it's really a primary kind of contact, a customer experience specialist trying to understand what the customer need is. It could be a salesperson, it could be a medical person, it could be a market access person. It depends basically on the customer and the relationship, which means sometimes this person can get an immediate answer. But if someone says, for example, let's say a more market access based person, I'm actually very interested to understand how digital solutions can, let's say, create real world data, real world evidence, because, we would really like to change the game and think about how paying for drugs will change. Then this person forwards the interest to our digital innovation hub team, which then can basically take contact and say, okay, let's really understand what are you trying to achieve. Would you like to get information on how real world evidence can be generated, how we use it? Would you like to be connected to different stakeholders who have the same interest? And then you can start to work on it. So it's still some kind of a key account model, but in its purest sense. You have one point of contact, which makes it easy for you to get an immediate answer or to make sure the follow-up can be organized very effectively, which makes it more satisfying and easy for you. So I would say that's the new rule. Make sure you have the best relationship by providing required answers as fast as possible through a single point of contact.
Thanks a lot. Maybe to sum it up, it sounds like the issue is having a concept like the Apple Genius in the Apple Store, right?
Yeah, something like this, yes.
Okay, interesting. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think the only extra thing I'd add to that is I think it starts with a desire to understand how decision making is followed in that market, in that therapeutic area, in that organization. And to Patrick's point, being flexible about where's not the historic owner, but who would be the best person, the best role to effectively take lead in that, and then as with that role to coordinate with their colleagues how best to work. And I think we've seen, if you look at, say, I guess a market like the US, where you have very large, complex buying networks in place already. If you think about an IDN, something like that, you might have a team of 20, 30 people who are basically performing different account-related roles in that organization to make it to make it work. A lot of those are going to be responsive in terms of from a service or medical perspective, but a lot of it is also on commercial negotiation. As well as supporting the actual, the end users with not just a product approach, but I suppose to kind of like borrow the whole beyond the pill maxim. It's that package of the solution rather than the product is what's being provided, and that of course has been demonstrated to drive adoption and to drive preference. So promotion certainly still has its place, and the rep HCP piece is not gone, but I think we're seeing a lot of organizations where it's becoming almost on demand, is that the business will determine when they want to switch promotion on and for how much to have an effect. So the kind of sort of constant presence of a rep on territory, there are many companies who are reevaluating that model so that it can be more agile in how they apply their resources across the market. They're not necessarily in field all the time. They are, I guess, like probably more sort of business to business teams. They're there when they need to be, but the rest of the time they could be working from home, they could be office based, and doing all the heavy lifting virtually.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Last question, we're left with 3 minutes, would be how important actually is the technology part within this whole customer experience journey? I mean, in my opinion, in many cases, we are really very blinded by the technology, which at the end of the day is not aligned with the people. And Patrick, at the very beginning, made some very good points how actually the issue aligned all that. But I mean, let's try to answer this particular question: how important technology is, and why actually technology is important. So, customer experience.
I'll go first on this one. I think put it this way: could you do this without the technology?
Of course not.
So the technology is important, but it's not. The technology allows us to actually think and change how we operate. If we didn't have the technology, we would be moving job bags around in folders. We would be filling in paper call reports and faxing them into our district manager, because that's what that was the reality not all that long ago. So technology clearly is a massive enabler, but it's not the end. It's not the whole answer by any means. And I think Patrick's absolutely just beautifully described. That relationship should be symbiotic.
Thanks a lot. Patrick?
So I can be a little bit more provocative, Chris. So I think you don't need technology to make it happen. Yeah. So let me give you just one example. The first time we created personalized content for 3 different personas, we didn't have any digital asset management in place. We didn't have any tool to create content. We worked with an external agencies, but we had the persona. No change processes for compliance and approval. It was all the same. But what we had was the mindset to say we test and learn. We define every 2 weeks what we need to achieve in an agile fashion, so Scrum Ban, and this really worked well. Of course, technology makes it easier, but I will put it in very simple words. I think technology is the most cited excuse not to start whatever. Yeah, and this is why I can only share the experience. If you would like to make it happen, you can make it happen with very limited technology.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you understand the value of technology. So, Chris, it's not like technology doesn't have a value. But if you have the wrong focus or focus too much on how do I approve modular content, when does legal and compliance needs to go in, it gets so complicated that you never start because you see a mountain piled up of problems. And when you trickled it agile, you focus on what can we do. And what we can do is to first decide what is the content we want to do. Then who needs to be involved? How can we approve it? You slice and dice the elephant, and in the end, you will be surprised by what the teams are actually able to do when you let them do their job.
Yeah, and I think just to that, I think it highlights it's the importance of discovery and a willingness to think and learn, to define what would be a better process, and then use technology to make that process better, to either scale it, to make it more robust, to make it more repeatable. That's what technology is there to do, not to define how your business works and what it is you do as a company.
Another question from the audience, but please try to be as short as possible, which is, do you have any thoughts, best practices regarding insight gathering via digital platforms? Who would like to answer on that?
Patrick?
Yeah, I can. So thanks, Georges. It depends. What is the purpose of the platform? Is it to, store basically customer data? Is it more, are we talking about a data lake or a data mesh? Or is it a digital customer platform where you're basically trying to collect as many information as possible from customers? So my recommendation would be first clarify what are you trying to achieve with the digital platform? Create a shared understanding and start small by saying, okay, if it's about collecting customer feedback, don't try to do it all at once. Websites, omni-channel campaigns, you name it. But let's say, do we have standardized, harmonized information in our CRM? If no, this is maybe where you should start before you try to complicate the whole situation by adding more layers of data and systems. So for me, key to success, or what worked for us very well, is really do small steps and then do the next once something is completed.
Fantastic. Chris?
Yeah, to close up, I think, I'd purely say, don't define your insights before you've looked at your data. I think that's often a big problem, that we sort of come into these programs with a fixed mindset of these are the measures, these are the metrics we need to gather, and then discover that we actually haven't got the information that we need. It's, we need to be, I think, a bit more reflective, particularly if we're talking about CX. We need to be ready to embrace new measures of impact, new measures of success, whether it's NPS, other similar things. But we can't just keep using the same performance measures that we did when we were measuring how active is a sales rep. That's we have to move forward from there.
Thanks a lot. With that thoughts, thank you very much, Chris, Patrick. It was a great conversation. We're looking to the next one, latest next year in May in Dubrovnik. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining. And have a nice rest of the day.
Thanks, Dario.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye.